Okay, so what we're going to talk about now here in the next 20, 25, 30 minutes is something called the, there's several components. There's the business model canvas. The broader concept is called the lean startup. And so let me go to Steve Blank's website and introduce you, first of all, to Steve Blank. All right. Looks like his website is trying to come up. There we go. So Steve Blank. Steve Blank was a serial, or is a serial Silicon Valley entrepreneur. He's started several businesses, I think mostly up in the Silicon Valley area. Very successful, but he loves to teach. And so he's kind of retired from starting businesses, but he likes to teach others how to do it. And he's a very good teacher. And he has written and been involved in some, I would say, groundbreaking publications on a new idea, a new way of approaching business. So the first thing I want to refer you to is, and by the way, this is his website, steveblank.com. And then I want to refer you to this article here, which is on his website. It's a free download. It's from the Harvard Business Review, and it's called "Why the Lean Startup Changes Everything." So again, you would just download that article. It's not long. It's 9 or 11 pages, something like that. But it explains this concept of the lean startup, and it talks about some of the earlier development steps in creating the concept of the lean startup, some of the key players, some of the early publications. So here's the article I just downloaded again. I've got multiple copies of this. But here it says, launching a new enterprise, whether it's a tech startup, a small business, or an initiative within a large corporation, has always been a hit or miss proposition. And according to the decades formally, you write a business plan, pitch it to investors, assemble a team, introduce a product, and start selling as hard as you can. And somewhere in this sequence of events, you'll probably suffer a fatal setback. The odds are not with you. As new research by Harvard Business School's, can't pronounce that name, shows 75% of all startups fail. And the numbers I've seen repeatedly are much higher than that, something more like in the 90%, 95% range. So anyway, it's very hard to get a successful startup. Lupi can probably tell us better than anyone about that because she works with them all the time. Anyway, but recently an important countervailing force has emerged, one that can make the process of starting a company less risky. It's a methodology called the lean startup, and it favors experimentation over elaborate planning, customer feedback over intuition, and iterative design over traditional big design upfront development. And so one of the key concepts of this, guys, is that you do this thing called the business model canvas, which we're going to look at here in just a moment. It's one page, has 9 boxes on it. And the idea is to get your business on paper in 9 boxes, 1 page, you want to be complete about it, of course, but to get it on paper as quickly as you can, and then go out and start talking to people about your idea. And you do that before you write a business plan. Now, there's some real strict adherence to the business model canvas that say, once you write the business model canvas, you never have to write a business plan. I think most people, including Steve Blank and others now, think you should also at some point write a business plan too. But that business model canvas, which we're going to look at here in just a moment, that's what you want to get as your starting point. And then you go out. I think Steve Blank at one point in time, probably as many times, has said, you get the hell out of the office and you go out and you talk to people. Talk to 100 people, several hundred people. Talk to 1,000 people if you can. But find out if your idea is going to work before you put a lot of time and work into it, especially writing a business plan that can take hours and hours and hundreds or thousands of dollars to write, only to find out that it's nothing that your customer wanted in the first place. So this is a very customer-centric, customer-driven process, and it's one where you're saying, I want to provide a product or a service that my customers want. And the only way I'm going to know what that is to go out and talk to them. So that's kind of the basic idea. Let's go back to see blank here real quick. I get this little pop-up screen which keeps me from, there we go. Okay, so that's the article, Harvard Business Review. And some of the earlier works on this subject were a book that Steve Blank wrote with Bob Dorff called The Startup Owner's Manual, which again covers a lot of these ideas. That's a pretty good book to have. And then let's see, there's another one that they wrote, or Steve wrote, The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. All right, well, let's go and look at the business model. Anyway, and then Steve's Blank website has a lot of really good stuff on it too. Again, he's a natural teacher, puts a lot of stuff up on his website for people to reference. I don't think he charges for anything except maybe a few things, but I don't even think he does that. I think most of it's free. He just enjoys doing this. So that's it, steveblank.com. So let's look now at this idea of the business model canvas. All right, so that came from, let's see, this book here called Business Model Generation. And I always carry a copy of that out of my briefcase. If we were on camera, I'd actually pull that out and show it to you. But if you're serious about starting a business, and Lupe, you should have a copy of this book on your desk at the bank. This business model generation introduces the idea of the business model canvas. Let me see if I can pull up a separate screen here that will show you what the actual one-page business model canvas looks like. Business model canvas template. Let's just look at that. Let's see, I think this one might do it. Nope. For what reason didn't like it? My computer doesn't like ads. Let's look at this one here. Let's see. Just trying to give you guys a snapshot of what this business model canvas actually looks like. Oh, okay. You know what? We can actually go to Wikipedia. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so there's the business model canvas. Let me make it a little bit bigger here, hopefully. Okay, so here's what the business model canvas looks like. You all can still see my screen, right? Yes?
Yeah. Yes.
So like Lupe, for example, in your case, you might want to, once you kind of read about this, and if you embrace the idea, you might actually want to have your customers, even if they have an existing business, this doesn't have to be for new businesses necessarily. It can be, for people as they're rethinking their business. And like you were saying, sometimes they come in and the bank's just not right for the financing that they need. And you're going to refer them somewhere else. But before they go to that someplace else, they should sit down and go through this business model canvas exercise. As a thought, as an example, for those of you, and statistically speaking, that's going to be at least 3 or 4 of you, because typically about 30% of people in any group of class or whatever, about 30% of people will want to start their own business. There's actually a much higher number than that that actually will do it. So even if now you don't think you're going to start a business, at some point in your lifetimes, it's, I don't know what the actual number is, but it's maybe as high as 70% of you will start something, maybe a little coffee stand or, little business making something to sell on Instagram or whatever, or anyway, Pinterest or, anyway, most people will at some point in time in their life start a business. So come back to this business model canvas whenever it is that you're thinking about starting your business. But here's the 9 boxes. So what this basically does on one page is it gets you to think about the most critical parts of your business. So those parts would be, who are your key partners? Okay. What are the key activities? Well, I wish I could read that small print. Let me grab my book real quick. Okay, like I said, I've always got this, get my copy of the book handy. And he's got things like, there's just like creative ways. Can you all see that, the book I'm holding up? You guys see that?
Yeah.
He's got little creative ways to work with it. You put little yellow stickies on it. This is a delightful book. It's not like real heavy reading. It's big print and pictures, but it talks you much more through the whole concept of what the business model canvas is all about and how it's structured and just basically how you should use it. So let's see. So the key participants, right? Key partners, key partnerships. Some activities are outsourced and some resources are required outside the enterprise. That would be your key partnerships. Key activities. Let's see. These are the 9 building blocks. Doesn't say always, but you can imagine what the key activities are. Is it going to be marketing? Is it going to be setting up a distribution channel, supply chain, stuff like that? Okay. Next one over is, I'm going to skip that one and come back to it. Down with the key resources. So key resources are the assets required to offer and deliver the previously described elements. Okay. Customer relationships. An organization serves one or several customer segments. And that's really a key in all of the business that we study, but it's also a key of what Steve Blank talks about, and a key of the whole business model canvas concept is that it's the customer that we're serving. If you don't know what your customer wants, you don't know who your customer is, you're going to fail as a business, just plain and simple. Okay, and part of that is understanding what your customer segments are. That was it. Sorry, that was the customer segments. Customer relationships are established and maintained with each customer segment. Okay, that's pretty obvious. The channels are value propositions are delivered to customers through communication, distribution, and sales channels. Okay, I'm saving one other one for last. So box number 7, we could say, would be the revenue streams. So you're going to put those revenue streams result from value propositions successfully offered to customers. In your cost structure, the business model elements result in the cost structure. Again, this whole book will explain to you, well, you can certainly Google it too on the internet and get a lot of. Now, the big one is the value proposition. So the value proposition seeks to solve customer problems and satisfy customer needs with value propositions. So what you're doing with value propositions is you're seeking to solve customer problems and satisfy customer needs. And when we go through, we won't do that tonight because we won't have time, but later on, when we go through the Steve Blank's Vimeo courses and video, webinars and so forth, he really talks a lot about this value proposition. And it's so important, in fact, that there's actually 2 books written. There's the business model, pop-up screen keeps coming in. So there's the business model generation book, but then there's also the value proposition design. So the value proposition design was actually the second book they wrote in the series. I see now they have 2 other books, and I haven't read these. I wasn't even aware of them. One is The Invincible Company, and the other is Testing Business Ideas. So I think those are going to be worth getting. But you know what, guys? If you're going to be an entrepreneur, invest a little bit of money in these books. At least these 2: Business Model Generation and the Business Proposition Design. And understand and spend some time on Steve Blank's website, and you know, and get to know what this whole concept of the lean startup is. And read that article. I would ask you guys to download a copy of that, and you know, maybe this weekend, with a long weekend coming up, read that article. That's this one here, the Harvard Business Review article. What else? Any questions on that so far? Oh, here. This is probably. I'll play around with this after the class tonight. But this looks like might be some of the startup videos. He's got just a ton of them. So anyway, so there's some thoughts. Again, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, and the difference between this concept and a regular business plan, I mean, it really is a completely different way of starting. But looking at it's a completely different way of looking at starting a business. And its biggest departure is getting away from all this really detailed planning or whatever, and then getting to the point realizing that no one wants it, as opposed to spending, you know, a few days or a weekend getting your idea, hashing it out, putting down the essential elements in 9 boxes on 1 page, and then going out and just talking to as many people as you can about it. And then, you know, one of the terms that they use a lot in this field is pivot, because you're going to have to pivot, guaranteed. It's so unlikely that your original idea is going to hold up, you know, throughout this whole process. So you're going to go out, you're going to talk to a lot of people, and they're going to say, well, we like this, but we don't like this. Okay, you pivot, you adjust, you modify, okay? And then you go out and you test it again. People will say, hey, that's really great improvement, but what about this? You still need to work. So again, and you keep refining before you ever write that business plan. And then I do think you need to write the business plan eventually, but that should be the last step. You need just to take that 1 page or 9 boxes and go out and create and test your idea. So that's the business model canvas, business model generation, Steve Blank. Any questions before we wrap up for the night? I'm going to stop the recording right now, actually.